Holy crap. This is my new favorite thing ever. I'm saying it's probably around 100 FPS. Wow. I gotta do that again. This is like take 6 of trying to film this video. I'm so excited, it's hard for me to stay in like a coherent space. I'm gonna try. It might get a little bit rambling. I hope you're comfortable, and I really hope you have something like a drink, because this video, it's gonna be interesting. Because this thing is just so freaking cool. And of course, I'm a little biased. I love pistols, and this is like the most pistol of all Nerf pistols I have used in a very long time. But I can't begin to explain how cool this is. This was sent to me for review from workerkit.com. There will be a link down in the description where you can buy this exact blaster, as well as check out what else they have. They have a whole bunch of different Nerf parts, including stuff from Worker, hence the name. They aren't actually Worker, but they sell a wide variety of Worker stuff, and wow, I'm very glad they sent this to me, although my opinion is still completely my own, and just treat this as a review for the Worker Hurricane Blaster, but of course I love all things pistols. I don't know why, something about a really effective, small, compact weapon really sings to me. I'm gonna blame mostly Metal Gear Solid for that one growing up, but man, the Hurricane is so freaking good. Like, even out of the box, okay? So you get this box and you literally just get this blaster in here and you get some instructions, and the instructions are actually really interesting. Not only do they show the complete internals and what you would do to modify it and all that stuff and install the official Worker upgrade kits for this blaster, but it also does things like tells you the range claims for not only the AA batteries, but then of course things like Trust Fire, Ultra Fire, kind of the 3.2 or 3.7 volt AA kind of things, whatever those are called. I can't remember the designation right now. And then even their 3S LiPo, and they do apparently sell their own 3S LiPo for this blaster right here. I don't know, I used just some other LiPo I had laying around, which we'll talk about a little bit, but yeah, out of the box, it's got this. In fact, this goes in the battery grip, and just pretend this thing is connected to some wires and not this XT60 connector here. And it works. Not very well. It's kind of like sub-end strike ranges, kind of felt like stock Maverick ranges, but you can't expect much for 2 AAs. But it's cool that, you know, even somebody who can't do any kind of soldering or anything like that can immediately use this thing. And while I'm a little miffed it doesn't just come with a disconnect for this to plug in some kind of LiPo, like this should just be on a connector, I'm assuming they did that to keep the cost down, because this blaster is like 25 bucks. And this is it brand new. I'm sure the price is actually going to go down with the Hurricane, which is great to think about, because this is injection molded. It is completely rigid. I absolutely love everything about this blaster. A lot of people did not like the fact that it's like, it looks kind of goofy. And I will admit, it looks goofy, but it works extremely well, and it's pretty much as small as they could get. It does have a barrel on it, so it could technically be smaller, but then it would just be really hard to aim, and it's already kind of in that zone because it doesn't have any kind of sight anywhere on it. It does kind of like, if you look down the barrel, it's got a ridge where everything kind of connects, and you can use that to aim at stuff, which I assume for the ranges you're probably going to be using this thing, and the fact that, you know, we're using Nerf darts anyway, it's perfectly fine. But it's a very well-built blaster, and the best part is I swear they made this blaster for me, because this grip is flawless. I don't know what it is, but like the place right here where my thumb would go, and where my trigger finger would go, and then the grip with the little ball right there on it just fits perfectly. And there's even a really nice grip texture built into it with the little Worker logo down there. Amazing. Not so hot with the aesthetics. In fact, I'm still trying to figure out why the trigger guard, it makes it, like, it's square, and I guess that's okay, but it just clashes with the rest of the aesthetic, in my opinion. But at the same time, this is like the most holsterable thing I could possibly imagine. Like, it's just a box. No frills, it's a box with a hole at the end and a trigger and a grip. and it's beautiful. It works so well. It's got an on-off button right there, so if you want to use that as like a kind of safety, it's really easy to access regardless of what hand you're using. It is completely ambidextrous, and the magazine itself is actually really interesting as well because it's got spring indents on it right there, and you can actually see the internals, which we will talk about, but you basically just load it by taking this rotary magazine and just slapping it on there. It's that easy. It's that quick to fully replenish this blaster. At least if you have multiple ones of these. They are really cheap to pick up, but you will need multiple of these rotary magazines, and they're really interesting how they work. They've got like, I'm not entirely sure. It's like, oh, I do know exactly how it works now. I just noticed that on camera, good. But it is a rotary magazine with a winding spring in it, which is controlled by this knob back here. And basically you just shove a dart in here and there's a stop on the side of the magazine. So when I put a dart in there, when I wind this back and go to the next chamber here, I'm gonna put a dart in there and that stop is going to prevent it from rolling back. But when that dart leaves, it's going to index to the next dart, and it holds 6 shots. Not a terrible amount, but for what this blaster is pretty much designed to be from the ground up, that is more than acceptable because it is meant to be a sidearm. It's meant to be kind of a last-ditch blaster you can use when you're caught reloading or your blaster jams, or probably more likely, in my opinion, is if you're trying to go into like a CQB area or you need to shoot around a corner. I don't think anything's really going to be beating this thing too much because it is really, really nice. And I should probably talk about how nice this thing is to use besides the ergonomics, because the actual trigger mechanism is the best I've seen in something like this in a very long time. So, I don't know how well you can hear this, but when I pull that trigger, there's a click, and that is, of course, this lever leaving this micro switch, which is how it revs. So, you pull the trigger a little bit, you hear that click, and it's actually really definite. There's force on the trigger, and that tells you it is revving, and of course the blaster will rev, and then you pull the trigger to launch darts, and that little arm just goes in here, flings a dart into the flywheels. The flywheels are not stock standard Strife Rapid Strike Demolisher size, but they are a lot bigger than the Flywheel the World flywheels. I'm not sure if that makes them better or worse. I have no idea what the motors is. I have not taken this thing apart, but I do know Worker sells different flywheels that you can put on here, which may have a higher crush. They definitely have a different texture. I'm not sure if they give you superior FPS or not, and they're only like $10, but that is an upgrade you can buy for your blaster. And it also has a new barrel, because this one right here is just a plastic barrel. I guess they assume you would need a metal kind of barrel, so they sell basically this metal barrel right here, but meant in this length, which is probably a good thing, and well, it works. It's very simple. Obviously, there's only one micro switch and then a connector to your battery tray, which it does say in the instructions this thing will work with like the 3.7 volt batteries, and it does work with the normal AA's, but most importantly, it works with a LiPo. Now, finding a LiPo that's going to fit in this grip, even if you try to Dremel this thing out, is going to be a challenge. And I know Worker sells one themselves. At least Worker Kit sells one that's for the Hurricane. I don't know if that's Worker's official recommendation or not, and they just found one that fit. But I happen to have this one right here, which says it's a 3S, says it's 1800 milliamp per hour. It's, I highly doubt the specs on this LiPo are correct, but it does say it's 3S, and well, it's the only thing I had that would really fit in here. I guess I could have tried it with a different LiPo, but now, at this point, I'm far too lazy to charge another one, and honestly, with the way this thing works, that's perfectly fine anyway. But this LiPo did work. It was from like a gel ball shooter or something like that, and, well, you just desolder the battery tray and solder on a new connection. I am kind of miffed they didn't just make the battery tray disconnect, but I think that was to keep the price down, because it really is an inexpensive blaster to pick up, and for what it does, and it fills a niche that we don't really have too many options for, especially if you want like to find something that does something similar to this. You basically have to go to the 3D printing community, which you can get something that's way cooler looking. You'd have to spend a lot more. You could buy 2 or 3 of these things for the price of one of those blasters. So yeah, and then the performance once you shove a LiPo into this thing, I was getting, when I chronoed in, this is, you know, kind of a fallible thing, because I am using the chronograph indoors, and I had to kind of fiddle with it to get it to read and everything like that, but I did do some range testing as well. It was hitting over 100 FPS. A couple in the high 90s, but most of them were over 100 FPS. Some shots seem too good to be true, like 130s, 140. I don't believe it's hitting that hard, but it is hitting reasonably hard. And that changes things a lot. Like, this thing does use full-length darts, and without some kind of modification, I don't see this working with any kind of half-lengths, because there's no way that could push a half-length all the way up there. But, oh, this thing. Like, I'm just gonna fire it into my hand to start with here, but of course, turn on the on switch. That really freaking hurt. Like, jeez. Like, do you hear? That is ridiculous. This thing is a pocket monster, a Pokemon. It's just incredible how well this works with this like no-named lipo that's probably garbage, but this thing is just so good. It does rapid fire extremely well, it does single shots extremely well, it's very intuitive to use, and yes, if you're going to reload the magazine, it's going to be extremely slow, but it's not meant to be like a top-up, ready-to-go blaster, and it doesn't use a magazine, so you don't have to worry about carrying extra magazines just for your secondary or sidearm. You just put new darts in there, and it works completely fine, and it's its own thing. If you want to carry multiple of these, they're extremely rigid, and they are square, so you can carry like 12 of them on you, and it would probably take up the same space as like 4 or 5 magazines. So, well, that's kind of hyperbole, but you get what I'm saying. This, I highly recommend. Now, if you're not going to mod it, even then, you're gonna be able to find yourself some those IMR kind of things that fit in here and, you know, would work perfectly and probably gives you pretty good FPS. From what I know, the lipo still hits way harder, but at least that's an option. Even if you want to use it stock for like indoor wars, maybe you're like, you have young kids or you are a young kid, you can't use something that hits that hard, 2 AA's and it works perfectly fine. It does shoot darts across the room, you're gonna have a good time with it, but when you plug this thing into a lipo, it is a destroyer. It is amazing how well this works, because my Desert Pigeon worked for a little while, and that thing is just a beautiful work of art, and it looks way cooler. It's like twice the size of this, but it is magazine fed, which is presumably if you need more than, probably a better primary than this thing, but if you need more than 6 shots. But I never got shots that were well above like the 90 mark, and I don't think it's gonna hit too much harder than that. This thing, again, I got shots in like 106. Maybe it does hit that like 130 mark of it, because that is hitting so freakishly hard. And again, this is with a bad battery. I'm gonna try to wrap this up because I've been going for a long time. Buy this blaster. It is an amazing blaster. It is well worth the money. It's probably well worth your money to get, I don't know if there's a motor upgrade for it. I don't even know what motors are in here, but the flywheel upgrades and stuff like that. But even just the stock blaster, throwing a random lipo in it, it hits so hard and so small and just great, amazing. I am so happy. I'm gonna have to buy like 6 more of these because, man, I want to pride. I need a second one. I'm gonna need 2 of them. Why would I not have 2 of these things? I'm Walcom S7. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what you think about the Worker Hurricane down in the comment section below. This thing is magically cool. I absolutely love it, and considering it's so cheap and effective and does something that's like a small, like it's tiny, and uses full-length darts and hits really, I just buy one, for real. Just buy the Worker Hurricane. Somehow. I don't care how, just get one.
You gotta